weekend, a good Easter, you know. Ate good, found some good eggs. Other than that, you know it. The lefties, the Democrats, they always tripping with some stupid shit. So other than that, I'm gonna play a couple of videos as always. Like and subscribe. Name is Deunta. Let's get into it.
Being successful in the current military operation in Iran, as it has now been reported that
President Trump says weapons systems officer is, quote, seriously wounded this morning after being rescued in a daring and heroic mission launched by U.S. forces inside Iran overnight. The injured airman survived being shot down behind enemy lines, CNN has learned, by hiding alone in a mountain crevice before he was rescued in a massive effort involving hundreds of American military and intelligence personnel. But if you were wondering how this operation might affect the president's posture toward Iran moving forward, wonder no longer. He has just threatened Iran in extraordinary graphic terms, giving the Iranian regime just over a day to either make a deal, reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or face hell. If your children are watching, be warned, the president did not use polite language. Quote, Tuesday will be power plant day and bridge day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it.
Great MAGA Monday morning, everybody.
Or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. We should note that destroying civilian power infrastructure is generally considered to constitute a war crime under international law, though the president could argue that the infrastructure has dual use and also is utilized by Iran's military.
All right, guys, so I have some very, very, very good news regarding the military conflict. Right, this is great news.
Good morning, Matt. Good morning.
For people who aren't so Trump deranged.
Good morning, Matt.
Actively rooting against this country, being successful in the current military operation in Iran, as it has now been reported that we have rescued 2 crew members of the military who had their planes shot down over Iranian territory. Okay, both crew members were ejected and landed in hostile territory, triggering an urgent rescue operation. The first crew member was rescued on the same day, and Iran and the U.S. entered.
Yeah, it was a good Easter. I had to work, brother, and that was good. Me and the wife, we chilled.
Iran offering a bounty
afterwards. After work, we chilled, had a good time.
Over the last few days, there's been speculation
about
how we're going to rescue this second crew member, okay, who is a colonel, a weapons system officer, who was wounded after the ejection, but could still walk and evaded capture in the mountains.
You know, it's all about Jesus, not them eggs. It's all about Jesus, not them eggs.
Liberals online essentially rooting against the United States military, rooting
food and friends. That's what's up, man. Blessings on that.
Iran would capture this second crew member so that it would make President Trump look bad, right? I'm serious. That is how a lot of people were reacting to this story. They were hoping that he would not be found. They were hoping that he would be captured because, again, that would make Trump look bad, right? These are the type of people that we're dealing with when it comes to this conflict, right? Not only do we have enemies, but also in our own country that we have to deal with while trying to fight this conflict. With that being said, they did not get what they wanted.
Great news overnight that the America has apparently retrieved the second aircrew that was ejected after the F-15 that was downed over Iran. And as a former fighter pilot myself and somebody who's ejected, I have first-hand experience of what that pilot must have gone through, and particularly what the families will have felt. Just how complicated was that rescue mission? So many would imagine it's just a helicopter going in to retrieve this pilot as part of a combat search and rescue operation. In fact, far from it. It's a much more complicated operation. Not only aircraft, but also there are reports suggesting that the CIA was involved, mounting a deception operation. Why is that important? Because you want to build as much time as possible before the Iranians actually come after the ground to provide the maximum amount of time for the American Special Forces and the combat search and rescue teams to identify, find, and extract this pilot. Time is critical. When they finally cleared the area, when they've identified the aircrew person on the ground, he will almost certainly be lying down, face down, arms out, because he mustn't present a threat to the teams coming in. They will land a helicopter very close by. They'll treat him very roughly, grab him, pile him onto the helicopter, and then all of them will try and get out safely. Now, we do understand that the aircrew was injured, probably as a result of the ejection, but we understand he'll be okay. We also understand that there was an engagement. In other words, that there were some Iranians trying to stop this operation. These operations are not without risk. As a former fighter pilot, you operate well above the area of these risks, but when you're doing a search and rescue and a retrieval operation, you've got to get down, it's got to be low level. It probably would have been at night to try and maximize the surprise and also the covert nature, but there'll be massive relief. I know when a former colleague of mine was shot down, there's grave worry, particularly with your colleagues. You're part of a close.
So they're doing using counterintelligence.
We haven't been talking about the name of the pilot. We just haven't known. They will have known, and so will the families of the people involved. And it will have been very harrowing times. Are they okay? Have they survived? Are they badly injured? Worse still, if they were managed to be captured, it'll be a massive relief for the families and their military colleagues that this successful operation was conducted and they're all safely out of Iran.
Now, this story of us rescuing this airman is nothing short of incredible, and what the United States military is able to pull off, I mean, it's just amazing. So,
we're the only ones.
I mean, to say that we're thankful for this military operation this morning, it doesn't even capture how incredible it is.
Yeah, so you've seen that, you heard that. Now, again, that is a great story, right, to wake up to on Easter, which is that no man was left behind, right? We went in, we got our guys.
Right, man. Brought them back safe. That's what's up, man. USA, baby.
Again, this is something that we all should be celebrating, right? We should be thankful that our U.S. military is so competent when it comes to these types
Joe
of
Biden probably
once again,
try to bribe him with some money or something like that. You know, I'm glad it's not going on. I'm glad we got
John Ratcliffe
Trump in office.
CIA proving his
We got him in
competence as well,
office.
too,
Blessings.
because apparently this is a very sophisticated deception campaign where the CIA operatives circulated information inside of Iran that both crew members had already been, right? They've already been recovered by the United States of America, right? And this confused members of the IRGC when searching for him, and that is what allowed the military to get more time in order to search for the missing crew member, which again demonstrates the capabilities of our military, right? Like our special operations forces can operate deep within Iranian mountain territory and conduct sustained multi-day operations, including using dozens of aircraft and personnel, and to execute a CIA deception campaign in real time inside of Iran. We destroyed our own aircraft to prevent capture and extracted the personnel under fire, all successfully. Right,
Commander-in-Chief.
Not just a rescue operation. That is a live operational rehearsal. The type of operation that would be needed, the type of capabilities that would be needed to do something like, for example, season Iran's uranium, which is something I've talked about as a possibility, right? The fact that special forces could be inserted into Iranian territory and the CIA could provide real-time intelligence support, sustain cover over Iranian airspace, and we could rapidly extract individuals, okay, or, entities or targets under fire, right? All of these elements are similar to, again, what would be required for us to actually get the uranium. Obviously, it would be probably a more complex mission, but I'm just saying that we've demonstrated capabilities that should send a warning to Iran that if they continue to refuse to make a deal, right, to capitulate to our demands, then there's going to be hell to pay, which is exactly what the president put out here today on Easter Sunday that has the mainstream liberal media losing their minds, right? President Trump says Tuesday will be power plant day and bridge day all wrapped into one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing Strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. Right? President Donald J. Trump. Wow. So that is a pretty wild message for the president to put out there, I gotta admit, on Easter Sunday. But at the end of the day, when you talk about war, it is what it is, right? This is the type of message that you have to send to your enemies in order to let them know that you're not effing around, that they're about to find out if they do not capitulate, okay? President Trump has been trying to give the Iranians a chance, their leadership, whoever that
What's
may
the
or may
saying?
not be,
Peace through spring?
we really don't know, a chance to comply with our demands, right? To make a deal and to bring this. But as of right now, they have refused to do so, and the president is threatening further escalation if they refuse to comply. That is the whole point of the message.
Yeah, guys, good morning. I just spoke with President Trump for 15 minutes. He gave me some new details on the negotiations behind the scenes with the Iranians and what's going to happen if Iran does not make a good faith deal. The president tells me if they don't make a deal and fast, I'm considering blowing everything up and taking over the oil. The president went on to say you're going to see bridges and power plants dropping all over their country. Now, I asked him about the possibility of an agreement with the Iranians. He says those who are negotiating on behalf of Iran have been granted amnesty at this time so they can continue the talks. And the president tells me he thinks he'll be able to get a deal by tomorrow. He says, I think there's a good chance tomorrow. They're negotiating now. All of this following the president's post on Truth Social, where he talked about these negotiations with the Iranians. We'll pull this up. He says, quote, Tuesday will be power plant day and bridge day, all wrapped up in one. In Iran, there will be nothing like it. Open the effing Strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. The president posting there on Truth Social about this ongoing operation and his new red line for the Iranian regime. Now, the president also provided new details on what happened earlier this year as the Iranian regime took to the streets and slaughtered what the president tells me is 45,000 civilians in their own country. After that took place, President Trump told me the United States sent guns to the Iranian protesters. He tells me we sent them a lot of guns. We sent them through the Kurds, and the president says he thinks the Kurds kept them. He went on to say we sent guns to the protesters, a lot of them. And so a number of headlines here from my conversation with President Trump. All of this taking place more than a month into Operation Epic Fury, and in the aftermath of that successful U.S. operation overnight to rescue that stranded U.S. service member inside Iranian territory. The president himself ordering that operation after the CIA came on Saturday morning and confirmed that they located where crew member of an F-15 that was shot down on Friday was located. Again, the president making that decision to send in hundreds of U.S. Special Forces deep into Iranian territory and successfully retrieving that U.S. service member.
Now, BS now, they're going to lose their minds, right?
Here we go.
They're going to call for the 25th Amendment. They're going to say, oh, the president is promoting war crimes, right? They whine and cry about the president being tough on Iran because, again, we have a significant amount of individuals in this country who are actively rooting.
And that's crazy. You got videos of President Obama talking about getting rid of Iran, stopping Iran from having nuclear weapons and all that. And here Trump take care of it. Now, it's an issue. I'm going to play a clip right quick. Watch this. This is crazy.
Against our president. They're actively rooting against our country in this conflict because they hate Trump so much. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Push. I want to go back to the president's tweet here. Open the fucking Strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch.
Crazy. Got a lot of nerve. Adam Schiff, the double standards against Trump is crazy. Got a lot of nerves to be in the face of American people saying for numerous administrations, Iran is a problem. They have to be dealt with. Iran's a problem. They have to be dealt with.
I strongly believe that our national security interest now depends upon preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
What I can say to you, Iran will never get a nuclear weapon on my watch.
And then this man deals with him, and then all of a sudden you're complaining about him now. Right. It doesn't really make sense. The double standards against Trump is...
Make it make sense, everybody. Make it make sense. How and why? That's why I voted for Trump, because he campaigned about taking care of business. On real. 100. Glad you guys in the chat. Like and subscribe. Name is Deunta. Man, the hypocrisy is amazing.
The Allah, President Donald J. Trump. That is a quote from the president. So yes, we are
Adam Schiff, the double standards against Trump.
I have been stuck on, so much so that we're doing a segment on it on the 9 o'clock, that what the president and this administration has been saying for at least the last week, that they actually did knock down a bridge that they said the military was using, that civilians used. They said that they're going to take out all of the power plants. The president said Tuesday will be power plant day. That would be considered a war crime. These that the president is saying sound like, to me, and a lot of experts, war crimes. And then you have the president with this new Truth Social today?
War crimes, you say, right? These people have no clue how the world actually works, right? They don't have a clue how war actually works. You know, I think in war, there's no such thing as a war crime, right? In regards to, you know, what's allowed and what's not allowed. Okay, if a country refuses to capitulate, a country that is responsible for the deaths of thousands.
Right
of our
on,
service
Matt. Right
members,
on.
if they refuse to capitulate to our demands, then everything is on the table, and that's essentially the message that the president is pushing, which is that nothing's off the table. And when you start taking stuff off the table, claiming, no, we're not going to do this because it's a war crime, right? Then, you know, hey, that's probably how the conflict drags on longer than it should, okay? Like, for example, Harry Truman had to make a decision to, you know, drop a nuke on Japan, because if we didn't do it, then it would have cost us more lives, right? I guess you can say that was a war crime, but it was a necessary war crime, and that war crime saved a lot of American lives, arguably, okay? So it is what it is. Hard decisions have to be made. If anything, that should be more motivation for Iran to capitulate, but we're going to see.
It's very difficult for me to process this moment. I mean, this is a unprecedented statement. We have the President of the United States basically declaring his intent to commit war crimes, right? You've accurately described the law. You're not supposed to be targeting civilian infrastructure, even in countries that you're nominally at war with.
Well, if it's helping their military, right? If the military is using it, then it's a target, right? It is what it is at this point.
And this is just a further...
That's crazy. If Trump don't use the military, they'll say he's weak. When he uses the military, they say he's a dictator. He's the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief. Why not use the military? It's right there at your disposal. He's the president. He's doing the right thing. People are happy.
Escalation of the Trump administration's sort of lack of interest in domestic and international law, right? It started with the boat strikes off the in the international waters.
47 years, death to America. Nah, gotta end all that. Ain't no giving them $1 billion. Slap on the wrist. No, take care of it. End it.
Off the central, right? Then we got the deposing of the Venezuelan president. We had the war in Iran, and now this, which is disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful, coming from our U.S. president. And the language is disgraceful. The claims are disgraceful. This is historically terrible communication. This is the sort of thing, I hate to say it, that you would expect to be introduced in a war crimes tribunal in the future.
Yeah. Soy boy.
Actually, I just want to weigh in quickly because David Rode, who was just on with us, sent one of our producers his reaction to this tweet, and it's very insightful. This will offend Iran's hardline jihadist leaders. It doesn't frighten them. Bullying religious extremists who want to become martyrs doesn't work. He says he's witnessed this in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Just to clarify.
Well, you know, hey, it is what it is. I think that there is an argument to be made that when you're dealing with lunatics and not rational people, right, that, yeah, I mean, you know, this type of stuff probably does not deter them. This is why Iran is a lot more difficult than a country like Venezuela or Cuba. It's because those people, those leaders running that country, they actually value their lives, right? They're not dying for their religion, right? That's not what they're trying to do. But I guess with the Iranians, you know, the individuals running this country, it's a little bit different. So at this point, you might as well just give them what they want, right? Give them what they want.
We also want to make a clarification. 1 p.m., the press conference will be tomorrow with military leaders in the Oval Office.
With the president. Laura, I know we're supposed to be talking about who the next Attorney General is going to be, but this right here from the President of the United States, were it anyone else, we would be talking about the 25th Amendment. People in Congress would be raising hell. And why do I get the feeling that neither one of those things is going to happen? I know this is just breaking, so you haven't even had a chance to work your sources here. But when the president does stuff like this, incendiary things like this, is there any behind-the-scenes panic from his staff that what he's doing is really undermining his presidency, but also America's standing in the world? Any kind of panic.
And safety.
There is There's some panic. I mean, there White House staff who have worked for President Trump, whether it's during the first administration or now, will acknowledge that half the time, probably more than half the time, they are reacting to what he is doing. They are learning about what he is doing when he does it, when he posts it on True Social, when he says something different in a press conference, when he goes off the cuff on speeches. That is him deciding. You can see it play out.
Like
when
and subscribe. And subscribe. Let's grow. Let's grow.
But he is sometimes just deciding in that moment what he wants to say or what he wants to pursue. Now, to your point, yes, I think that your assessment is right. Are we going to see Republicans running out saying this is
unacceptable,
frightening, and that we actually should support a war powers vote? No, you're not going to see that, because there are plenty of Republicans who have also encouraged the president to take more aggressive action, namely someone like Lindsey Graham.
And we should point out, so you heard that full-blown meltdown from the media. Oh, Trump is saying mean things to the Iranians. Oh God, it's terrible, right? How many times have these people complained about the Iranians saying mean things about us, right? Like death to America.
I just said that.
How many times have they complained about that? How many times have they boo-hoo, whine, and cried and said, is Iran ruining their reputation on the world stage by saying death to America? Probably never, right? They've never had a conversation about that. I just find it to be so interesting how these people openly root for foreign countries, right? That's what they do at this point, right? Again, I've taken an approach when it comes to this operation that I'm going to wait and see. I don't know how it's going to play out, right? I personally...
The president had this is Adam Schiff got completely exposed. This statement from the administration. The president had the constitutional authority to direct the use of military force because he could reasonably determine that such use of force was in the national interest. That's too vague for you? Totally vague. Okay, because that's from Obama. Catch it! Adam Schiff got the double standards against Trump is crazy. Got a lot of nerves to be in the face of American people saying for numerous administrations, Iran is a problem. They have to be dealt with. Iran's a problem. They have to be dealt with.
I strongly believe that our national security interest now depends upon preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
Well, I can say to you, Iran will never get a nuclear weapon on my watch.
And then this man deals with him, and then all of a sudden you're complaining about him now. Right. It doesn't really make sense. The double...
Amazing, people. What the blank is going on?
Troops are headed to...
Also prepares to deploy thousands of additional troops to the Middle East.
So, as the conflict in Iran continues, half the regime has completely rejected any idea of a ceasefire. At least, that's what they're saying publicly, while continuing to claim they'll...
Jimmy, welcome to YouTube. How you doing?
Cut off the world's economy while refusing to surrender their missile program as the president continues to wipe it out. Overnight, the United States used 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs to target an Iranian ammunition depot. While President Trump is still offering Iran a chance at a diplomatic solution, the U.S. and Israel are ramping up pressure on the Islamic Republic.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
According to the report, ground operations would not constitute a full invasion force. Instead, special forces and amphibious assault troops would likely target strategic islands in the Persian Gulf, such as Karg Island, a key node in Iran's oil industry.
Despite all of the public posturing you hear from the regime and false reporting, talks are continuing and going well. What is said publicly is, of course, much different than what's being communicated to us privately.
If there's no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously.
So you got to understand something. When you see an article with a title like this, you got to realize that you're looking at phase 2 of this thing right in your own living room. Because what nobody's talking about is this regime. They've realized they cannot win a conventional campaign with their Chinese weapons. They've lost on the battlefield. So now they're opening up a new battlefield in your mind. And their goal is to twist the
truth and lie to the American people, convincing them this is Iraq 2.0, even though the president, the Secretary of State, and every member of the armed forces have made it abundantly clear the world is witnessing the most successful military operation in history, reducing Iran's formerly massive stockpile of weapons and drones to dust. But it's fascinating. The doomers, the naysayers, saying the exact same thing. Trump's got no plan, none of his advisors agree with him, he's dragging us into a forever war, and he's got no idea how to get us out of it. But here's the thing, forever wars aren't over in weeks. They last forever, and it appears this conflict...
No problem, Mel. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning.
Conflict is already over, because not only does the regime have zero ability to project power and threaten its neighbors and us, nobody's seen their leaders like the replacement Ayatollah. Plus, many a regime general hasn't clocked in for their shift recently, and the only mouthpieces this dictatorship has left are either in hiding or openly defending the regime somewhere in America. Which brings us to the real reason the president just went on national TV and told the entire world and our country that this thing is over, even while troops are headed to the Middle East. We're now witnessing dual propaganda campaigns, one of which is designed to make Americans think they've lost a war that's already over, and another that's designed to keep this regime on its toes until the president and our Gulf allies have decided it's collapsed enough. At which point the world will be assured Iran is no longer a threat to freedom or to its own people who are still out there on the streets protesting, something I don't think the regime or their partners in crime here in America find acceptable.
All three of my brothers served in the military, my oldest brother in Vietnam. President Trump is treating war with Iran like a game.
Right. You're supposed to be Indian, Pocahontas. Stop it, Elizabeth. Stop it.
As if Commander-in-Chief was some kind of costume and Secretary of War was a fancy pretend title. They're calling the war Operation Epic Fury. These are not serious people.
So if you listen to Elizabeth Warren, this is another Vietnam, this is another Iraq, it's a disaster. Trump doesn't care about the troops. Oh no, he doesn't like the troops at all. He's just sending them out there to do his bidding. And even after Trump addressed the nation, people are still saying the exact same thing she said. Watch this.
If you were expecting something new, you did not get it. It was a litany of lies that he's told before about facts of the matter, that Barack Obama gave the Iranians billions of dollars. He didn't. It was repatriated assets that had been seized by the United States pursuant to that negotiated deal, that Iran was on the doorstep of a nuclear weapon. There's literally no one who says they were.
Right, so Trump, he didn't give the Iranians any money. He did, but it was repatriated money that, they were never entitled to in the first. You can't make this stuff up. It's almost like people want to see the regime succeed because they want to see our president fail.
Well, I don't think it constitutes regime change to eliminate a lot of the top people and have precisely people who have the same ideology replace them. The president's talked a lot about how this negotiation has been going when the regime itself denies there's any negotiation at all. So we have a fundamental problem there.
I feel like John Bolton is mad that he's not part of the second Trump administration. Here he is as an expert on TV from the outside, looking inwards, trying to figure out what's going on. He's not privy to any of the national security discussions that are taking place around this. And it's fascinating that people like this for no talks and that Trump is just out there bluffing.
History says you're not telling the truth when it comes to productive conversations to end the war.
Well, they're going to have to get themselves better public relations people. We have had very, very strong talks. We'll see where they lead. We have major points of agreement. I would say almost all points of agreement. Perhaps that hasn't been conveyed. The communication, as you know, has been blown to pieces. They're unable to talk to each other.
Yeah, so the president says Iran needs a better PR team. But here's the problem. You've got part of the regime that wants to have talks, the non-radicals, and then you've got the other guys that say they're going to fight this thing out forever. And if you want video evidence that this regime is on borrowed time, just look at this clip right here of one of their officials. Look at the room he's in. White walls, Nothing hanging on the walls, freshly painted, which means his back is to the wall literally as he's in what looks to be a safe house where you see on the table a photoshopped picture of all of the Ayatollahs and a novelty flag that you could have bought at a gift shop. You see that little microphone right there? That's how YouTubers make videos. It's a cheap microphone that connects to your smartphone or to your camera, which means the high quality propaganda machine that this regime was using to create promotional videos for their military and make them look like the toughest people on the planet. Well, that's not in whatever safe house this guy is in now. But now the question is, what is the United States doing here? Why are we in this situation? Who's right? Who's wrong? Was there ever a plan to begin with? Was there no plan? Let's clear up some misconceptions.
Many Americans are asking, why did the United States have to attack Iran now? Well, let me explain. Iran wants to have nuclear weapons. Of that, there is zero doubt. If what
Good
they
one,
truly wanted,
Pocahontas.
which is what they claim, is nuclear
She
energy.
got high
Well,
cheekbones.
they could have nuclear energy, like all the other countries in the world have it. And that is, you import the fuel and you build reactors above ground. That's not what Iran has done. They build their reactors and their facilities deep in mountains, away from the public glare. And they want to enrich that material. The same equipment that they could use to enrich material for energy, they could use to quickly enrich it to weapons grade. So it is clear that they've been offered every opportunity to have a nuclear program that allows them to have energy, not weapons. And every single time they have turned it down. But why the attack now? Well, what was Iran trying to do? Iran was trying to build a conventional shield, in essence, have so many missiles, have so many drones that no one could attack them. And they were well on their way. We were on the verge of an Iran that had so many missiles and so many drones that no one could do anything about their nuclear weapons program in the future. That was an intolerable risk, and under no circumstances can they be allowed to hide and protect that program and their ambitions behind a
Big
shield
Marco.
of missiles and drones that no one can do anything about.
Then they turn into North Korea. That was the plan here. The plan was to solidify themselves militarily so that the cost of acting and stopping their secretive nuclear program, which relies on nuclear reactors built way deep underground. But yeah, if they're loaded up with missiles and weapons, you can't touch them. No one's going to have the willpower to go because the cost will be too high. And then what do you have? You have another forever regime like you have in North Korea, who you can't negotiate with at all, because if you want to negotiate with Kim, you're flirting with mutually assured destruction. So what happens? The world has to leave North Korea alone, to allow North Korea to exist, because North Korea will force the world to allow it to exist, and we don't need another regime like that. But now the big question is, Trump says this thing is over. He says the United States is leaving. He says we're going to be done very soon, but troops are on the way. What's up with that?
We'll be leaving very soon, and if France or some other country wants to get oil or gas, they'll go up through the Strait and Hormuz Strait. They'll go right up there, and they'll be able to fend for themselves. I think it'll be very safe, actually, but we have nothing to do with that. What happens in the Strait, we're not going to have anything to do with, because these countries, China, will go up and they'll fuel up their beautiful ships and they'll leave and they'll take care of themselves. There's no reason for us to do it. We hit them hard. We got rid of a lot of the radicalized.
So Trump says we're leaving. He says we've knocked out all of their missiles. He says that there's nothing that this regime can do to threaten everybody, and it's now so safe even our allies, who might be able to muster up some delayed courage, can now go to the Strait of Hormuz and help their own economies get the oil they rely on from places like the Persian Gulf. But this is where the...
Hey, Chad, when it comes to the United States Senate, the Democrat held the office the longest. Out of 25 in office, 15 Democrats and 9 Republicans. When it comes to who held the longest in office, the Democrats did, or has, and still now. That's crazy. Out of 25, 15 and 9.
The propaganda campaign kicks back in.
Democrats
You see,
and
you've got
Republicans.
people out there that want to see the president fail.
15
You've got people out there
Republicans.
that are hoping
Yeah,
that the
15
president gets
Democrats.
himself
15
in too
Democrats
deep with this whole thing and
held the
creates
office
a
the
terrible
longest.
situation, an external force that comes along and convinces the American people that this guy's lost it. And when they see troops and backpacks, they think this is our opportunity to scare people. This is our opportunity to tell people that Trump's a liar and he's playing us all for fools and he's getting us into another forever war. What about that?
We were told it's probably going to be about 4 to 6 weeks. I agree with Senator Cotton that everything I've heard, we're still ahead of schedule.
Michael, sending in Marines and sending in the 82nd Airborne to the region, does that apply appropriate pressure to talks with the Iranians?
I think so. I think it gives the president options, first and foremost, but it is also leverage. It's the idea that, you know what, we may take your oil export hub, which is called Karg Island, of course, or we may deploy to certain islands along the Strait of Hormuz so that we might be able to help reestablish tanker traffic through this corridor. So I think it's a move that the president is making. I can't rule out that we would use a ground raid to take Karg or take some other tactical sort of venue.
And that's why the troops are there, because if you can't rule out what they're going to do, you don't know what they're going to do, and you might have to consider to yourself, what if these guys do take that little oil export hub? What if they do that and cut our country off from the only way we have to make any money? You see, this whole thing is about the idea of energy diplomacy. Energy controls the world. But Trump said something very interesting. When he gave his speech, he said that the United States specifically avoided hitting Iran's oil supplies. Why is that?
No deal is made. We have our eyes on key targets. If there is no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously. We have not hit their oil, even though that's the easiest target of all, because it would not give them even a small chance of survival or rebuilding. But we could hit it, and it would be gone, and there's not a thing they could do about it.
But why aren't we hitting it? Well, the president just said, if the oil infrastructure is gone, then the country has no ability to find itself and to be self-sufficient. And if you want to ensure regime collapse without going about an invasion, without going about instituting regime collapse on your own, trying to swap one dictator for another or bring in somebody who's like a U.S. ally to run the country and putting that person in power, if you want to have that happen on its own, we're watching exactly what you need to do. The first thing you need is you need to get rid of this regime's ability to project power. Rubio told us about that. They're making so many drones and so many weapons. You're not a regime once you stop having drones and a hangar. And if they can't be a terror to the entire world, if they can't threaten their own neighbors, they stop being able to threaten their own people. And then the only thing they have left is all of this oil that they could sell and make money and enrich themselves. They're almost going to be sucked in to the world economy, and they're not going to be able to come into the world economy in a non-sanctioned legitimate state if they're going to be a hostile militant aggressor. So the only way out for Iran, it's being set up. They've got to follow this oil pipeline back into the rest of the economy, back to civilization. And this is going to be a great thing for everybody. It's going to force them to be a normal country. And that's why the troops are so important. If troops have to go and preserve oil infrastructure on Karg Island without invading Iran, this little offshore island hub, that's exactly what they're going to do if they need to do it.
We have midterms coming up. Can the United States leave Iran in a better place soon?
That's what this is all about.
Leave Iran in a better place from an
Good
American
morning,
perspective.
everybody.
I mean,
Thank you
I
guys
would
for being in the
say
chat.
this
Thank you,
idea
thank you.
that Iran is going to be more dangerous if the United States doesn't do X, Y, or Z, I completely think that that's not based on the facts. I mean, Iran is already so much significantly degraded. They do not have the ability to project power outside their borders. We've eliminated their air force, their navy.
Subscribe if you guys haven't subscribed. If you
their
haven't.
missile capabilities, and the thing that I always track is their ability to reproduce missiles and drones. And the United States is working with the Israelis to just completely degrade any of that capability. And every single day, we get greater insight and intelligence as to where these launchers are.
They're going to have nothing. They won't be able to produce missiles and weapons and sell anything except their own oil. The only pathway out of this for the regime is to not be a regime anymore, is to go back to being a normal country. And they're not going to re-enter the global economy and not be immediately sanctioned if they're oppressing their own people, if they're not going to allow freedom and capitalism at the exact same time. You see, you have a dictatorship, you have massive state fascist restrictions on everything, because that's how these places are run. If the only thing they've got left is the one thing that the rest of the world values, and they're forced to engage in free trade, that's going to transform this country overnight without firing a shot.
According to the report, ground operations would not constitute a full invasion force.
Yeah, it's not going to be an invasion.
Instead, special forces and amphibious assault troops would likely target strategic islands in the Persian Gulf. such as Karg Island, a key node in Iran's oil industry, seen by some as a potential way to pressure the Iranian regime. The US officials have refused to be drawn on any plans for a ground invasion.
In terms of why there's deployments, number one, the president has to be prepared for multiple contingencies, which I'm not going to discuss in the media. And again, I refer you to the Department of War, who will probably tell you the exact same thing. But we can achieve all of our objectives without ground troops, but we are always going to be prepared to give President maximum optionality and maximum opportunity to adjust to contingencies should they emerge.
US media reports say Trump is considering sending 1,000 troops from the...
But that's why the troops are there. You've got to be ready in case something happens. You've also got to have a smokescreen and a propaganda campaign out there to force these regimes to the negotiating table, which is what we're watching. And if the one thing Iran has that is going to cause it to collapse its vast natural resources, which it will need to sell to the entire world while being peaceful, well, you're going to want to protect that, because that's what's going to change this country. That's what's going to bring freedom back to its people. That's what's going to benefit the entire world at the exact same time. And it's all falling into place. When the president got into this, he said that regime change was never a goal. He said the goal was never to allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon.
Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing. Change was not our goal. We never said regime change, but regime change has occurred because of all of their original leaders' death. They're all dead. The new group is less radical and much more reasonable.
It's happened. The regime has changed. And now we're looking at what could finally be a free Iran. We can see it on the horizon. It's out there if you're willing to cut past the noise and cut past the people.
Consecutively coming one after another.
Several hours as it provides several of these updates, also previewing some of the major events that we were highlighting for throughout the day. I want to take us out quickly to a live.
This is 2 hours ago. 2 hours ago.
Washington, D.C. Coming up today, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, President Trump is set to provide an update on the war in Iran. This was posted via the White House over the weekend, in which the president said he would host a news conference also featuring several military members. And at the same time, I do want to focus on those latest developments coming out of the Middle East as I bring us out to this, a live image that we have over at the Strait of Hormuz. This is courtesy of marine traffic, and it just shows some of the traffic and those vessels that are still caught there in that strait and trying to make their way through. The Associated Press saying this, some of the major moments and updates from throughout the day today. The head of intelligence for Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard was killed. That's according to Iranian state media. Now, Israel claimed the killing on Monday, so earlier today. The Israeli defense minister said this, quote, Iran's leaders live with a sense of being targeted. We will continue to hunt them down one by one. Also, Israel and the United States carried out a wave of attacks on Iran throughout this Monday, killing more than 25 people. Iran responded with missile fire on Israel and its Gulf Arab neighbors. And then also, President Trump has set a deadline for Tehran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. That deadline is looming and does continue up until tomorrow evening, so that's Tuesday. President Trump gave Tehran a deadline that expires on Monday night at least, saying if no deal was reached to reopen the strait, the U.S. would hit Iran's power plants and other infrastructure targets and set the country back to the Stone Ages. That was a direct quote from the president. Now, following that thread in which he posted on his Truth social media platform, Iran's paramilitary speaker called the threats of targeting Iran's infrastructure, quote, reckless. I also want to bring us out to this, a live image that we have over in Tel Aviv, Israel, because, of course, we know that the U.S. and Israel are conducting those joint strikes against Iran, but also in other parts of the Middle East, including in Lebanon. At the same time, Egyptian, Pakistani, and Turkish mediators have sent Iran and the U.S. a proposal calling for a 45-day ceasefire and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz to give time to find a way to end the war. That's according to two Middle Eastern officials and what they have told to the Associated Press.
The U.S. have not responded to the proposal, which was sent late Sunday night to both Iranian Foreign Minister and the U.S. Middle Eastern Envoy Steve Witkoff. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the private negotiations. We also have live images coming out of Beirut in Lebanon, another area in which we have seen a lot of activity happening throughout the last several days, including smoke out there in the distance as those strikes continue. The death toll from the war has risen to more than 1,900 people in Iran and over 1,200 people in Lebanon. Iran's government has not updated the toll for days. In Gulf Arab states and the occupied West Bank, more than 24 people have died, while 19 have been reported dead in Israel and 13 U.S. service members have been killed. Millions of people in Iran and Lebanon have been displaced. I want to get out to this also, some images that we had earlier on today, given a missile strike that happened over in Haifa in Israel. Take a look at this on your screen. As we know that cleanup efforts are underway at this time, and we do also know that the Israel Defense Forces did post a statement on this missile strike to their social media platform on X. I'd like to play out some of their remarks next.
I'm standing here in Haifa. Behind me, you can see the destruction site. Earlier this evening, a missile that was launched from Iran hit this site, a building in the middle of the city of Haifa. In this building, right at this moment, there are 4 people captured, missing. Other than these people, many others injured, and we needed to evacuate them to hospitals. Once again, the Iranian regime aims its missiles to civilian target, to the civilian population of the state of Israel. And here again, we have a major destruction site, and you can see serious damage here behind me. The Israeli public is resilient. The IDF keeps on fighting and defending the state of Israel.
And that was the short social media post courtesy of the IDF. They posted it again to their social media platform on X. Fox News correspondent Trey Yates also posting this regarding that missile strike. He says 4 bodies recovered from the ballistic missile impact site in Haifa, Israel. Still,
the Newsmax is okay
a lot
too.
of developments to get to this morning, particularly when it comes to negotiations between the U.S. and Iran. Now that we know that President Trump has given a deadline for Tehran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. I want to bring into the conversation now Jonathan Sayed. He is an Iran program research analyst at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Jonathan, good morning.
Hi, it's great to be with you again.
Always good to have you. All right, so let's start with this. Some major news from earlier today. Reports are saying that Iran and the U.S., they have received a draft proposal to get a ceasefire underway for at least the next 45 days to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and to hopefully end the war. Jonathan, what do we know about some of the major points in that proposal, and really what points would need to be there to get both sides to agree to that ceasefire?
I think the main question on everyone's minds, of course, a lot of us are relying on leaked information, but the main question is, how far is the demand going from the American side? Are they using this as an opportunity to build on past successes and actually demand more than just the Strait opening, go after some of the enriched uranium that's buried underground? Or is Trump going to simply limit this to a short time agreement, just an really a MOI of understanding on how we can really open up the Strait? That's the real question. But the more important angle here is the fact that unlike what Washington has noted, that there's already been regime change in Tehran, we have not seen behavior change for the Islamic Republic leaders currently, the ones that are leading the negotiations. Of course, they've been shielded from potential Israeli assassinations. That said, that is not a guarantee forever. If they fail to really reach an agreement, I can imagine the president not only moving forward with his threats against critical Iranian infrastructure, but also further leadership decapitation and genuinely disrupt the command structure of the regime.
Jonathan, I would be remiss if I did not showcase this social media post that the president posted over the weekend. I do want to say it's a bit colorful, big graphic, and some posts here. He posted this via Truth Social. Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the expletive Strait. And he just continues on to say, or you'll be living in, and I'm assuming that our viewers can guess what he's saying here. So he is increasingly putting this pressure on Iran. I have to know, how is the Iranian regime responding when they see the president take to social media to issue these sort of demands, and within this context?
Islamic Republic leaders know after a few rounds of negotiations and threats consecutively coming one after another that any threat posed by this administration is legitimate. Trump has followed suit with every threat he's made, whether it was the prior to the 12-day war or with the recent ongoing campaign. So that's very key in the minds of Iranian policymakers, knowing that when he threatens, he's going to follow through. That said, the messaging itself could actually facilitate and pave the way for Tehran to, one way or another, try to create a rally around the flag effect. Once you actually threaten Iranian infrastructure and go after assets that are also beneficial to average Iranians, there is a risk there that you might be alienating them. That said, these are people that have been living under the Islamic Republic, the mismanagement by the regime that has
Walter
been
Cronkite, okay, yeah,
on the
man.
infrastructure side, economic side, political, on whatever angle you look at. So to the average Iranian, the regime has not been competent enough to deliver on anything. So maybe to their minds, any attacks on critical infrastructure would just be a continuation of living under the Islamic Republic. But that said, bridges
Pure
and power
blood
plants,
here. Pure blood, no vaccine, none of that stuff.
ultimately, Iranians have been living under very harsh conditions, and worsening that could escalate the situation internally. So it's a double-edged sword when you threaten those kinds of assets inside Iran. That said, if the idea is to somehow create some sort of an anti-regime movement again and reignite that momentum, the best way to go about it is to ensure that you really play into the grievances of Iranians, you play into the challenges that they have versus the regime. But I would end it with this, talking to folks on the ground and being Iranian myself, the understanding there is a lot of these key infrastructure can be rebuilt. We can rebuild roads and bridges and power plants, but what we cannot do is to revive the tens of thousands of young, innocent, unarmed protesters that were massacred on the street. So time is of essence. So long as this campaign continues to be about liberating Iranian people, or at least paving the way for them to define their own destiny, I think the average Iranian will be on board. But that said, messaging is important. PR really matters during wartime.
And we're going to get to just the impact to Iranian civilians and also protesters a little later on in this segment. First, though, staying with the Strait of Hormuz for this. This is a social media post courtesy of Fox News correspondent Matt Finn. He says this: the UAE insists even if there is a ceasefire, Iran cannot remain in control of the Strait of Hormuz and call the strait.
That's what's up. Yeah, I used to work in Chicago as head of security at Austin High School. I stepped down from being head of security from that job because of that, taking a shot, constantly taking temperature checks and all that BS for no reason. So I stepped down from that. So, yeah.
Everyone's problem. The issue, Hormuz, has to be a part and parcel of the settlement of any conflict with clear agreement on that. Jonathan, is there any kind of scenario?
Right, then we gotta wear the face mask, and then you gotta tell the kids to keep their face mask on. Tell the kids every day, all day, keep the face mask on. These kids ain't gonna listen. You got the mask halfway here, go up under their chin, or up here on some silly shit. That shit was annoying, knowing that there was a freaking BS the whole entire time.
Which Iran would cede control of the strait, and what are
Yeah, he straight pooped on himself when he shitted on himself in the world, around the world a lot of times. Joe Biden did. Everywhere Biden went, he shitted on himself.
The Iranian regime, when they see global leaders talking about the future of the strait and that Iran may not have full control of it.
So when we talk about global leaders, let's say pushing back against the Islamic Republic, so far we haven't seen really much or anything from Europe, France actually caved and did not vote for that UN resolution against the Islamic Republic, which is why their ships can now operate in the Strait of Hormuz. The United Arab Emirates has been the only one that's taken even remotely an assertive stance against the regime. I do think Washington is going to take that into account. So far, Persian Gulf states, Europe, of course, China and Russia, really meaningful coming from them, that for them to really condemn the Islamic Republic, which is quite concerning, and of course gives the regime an incentive to continue with its, of course, destructive behavior and
Poopy Pants
regionalizing
Biden.
war. Those are the main issues, but you mentioned something very significant, which is how has the regime responded?
That was straight elder abuse what they did to Joe
Tehran's,
Biden. Straight elder abuse.
Policy thoughts as to what leverage they had, what can they concede, and the mindset was, and I saw this over the weekend. There was an interview with a regime official.
If the Democrats are going to put somebody up to run, they should have had Bernie Sanders instead of Joe Biden. At least Bernie Sanders would be pooping in his pants, you know. But it is what it is. MAGA, baby, MAGA.
They noted that should we give up the access to the Strait of Hormuz, we will turn into Gaza. So the Iranian mindset right now is, should they compromise in any way, that's going to be the total end of the regime or the Islamic Republic as we know it. That's their mindset. So going back to the question on negotiations, probably what they're thinking is that they want some long-term meaningful guarantees that should they open
Subscribe. You guys have it. Subscribe.
and so on
Why
and
not?
so forth.
Thank you.
Now, would Washington ever provide something like that during times of crisis, given that very much Jerusalem and Washington are aligned on somehow paving the way for the prospects of regime change? Looks very unlikely, but again, just tells you about how far apart the different two sides are during an ongoing conflict.
Jonathan, we have another major development from early this morning. Taking a look at a social media post from the Israel Defense Forces, eliminated, and they're talking about the fact that the head of the intelligence for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard was killed. What is the most significant impact from this latest killing of this major general?
The main impact is internal. Looking at Israeli assassination waves throughout the past 5 weeks, there's been little pillars, but one has been stronger than the other. Of course, one focus has been taking out the command structure, missile, command people, figures that are either tasked with developing grand strategy of regime defiance or somehow coordinating the different armed forces factions. Now, parallel to that, which has been more significant, is the internal security structure. So individuals that are involved in repressing protesters, killing unarmed Iranians, or somehow terrorizing the masses of the population to deter them from taking to the street. And that's what this individual is. So being of course, the intel command of the RGC, is one of his main responsibilities is actually surveilling dissidents inside and, working behind the scenes to ensure that the average Iranian has no hope and is afraid of taking to the street. That's their primary job. And of course, the RGC being a brutal instrument of torturing the Iranians and dissidents, this is a devastating blow. But the grand strategic agenda by Israel here is to, at least from what it seems, is to eliminate the top leadership, so the commanders of key forces, and then to go after mid-level commander, brigade leaders, things of that nature, and inform them that time is not on their side. Should they not somehow work with Israel or with the Iranian dissidents, they'll also be eliminated. So that's the strategy there. We have to keep in mind there's hundreds of thousands of Iranian armed personnel left. So
Thank you.
It's not realistic
Appreciate
to
it, guys.
expect
Thank
all
you,
of them
guys.
to be
Thank
killed
you.
during this war. I think the idea is to either have them defect through psyops,
Appreciate that.
or
Thank you.
arm
Thank
the
you.
Iranian populace so they can define their own destiny and actually counter whatever is repressing them the most, which is this armed body of the RGC and military.
We're taking a live look over in Tel Aviv, Israel. Again, Israel's the one that is claiming responsibility for that latest killing. And there's a couple of more social media posts that I want to get your reaction from, Jonathan. And these next couple of posts have to do with Kurdish forces. It's something that we talked about when this war first broke out several weeks ago. Fox News correspondent Trey Ying says this, and he posted this over the weekend. The United States sent guns to the Iranian protesters through the Kurds. President Trump told Fox News, quote, "We sent guns to the protesters, a lot of them, and I think the Kurds took the guns." Now, some Kurdish factions also responded And Strait has another social media post. He says this. They responding to the remarks from President Trump, quote, "We did not receive any weapons during the time of demonstrations in Iran." Fox also reached out to additional Kurdish parties for comment. We're waiting to hear on that. So the question with this, what kind of moves are we seeing from Kurdish forces, Jonathan, and what do we know about potential communication between the Kurds and the U.S.?
There are so many moving parts with the Kurdish developments that it's really hard to narrow down. But the overall image here was that United States and Israel were somehow entertaining, deploying, or at least assisting Iranian and Iraqi Kurdish faction. But what ended up happening, at least looking at online reporting, indicates that the Kurds did not receive enough reassurances that should they launch a ground operation against the Islamic Republic, they will receive sufficient air support or just military backing as a whole. Because they saw what happened in...
Good morning, Brian. The gas prices will go down a little bit, Lord. Just hold on. The gas prices go down. Good morning, good morning. You gotta be patient. We're doing the long haul, not that short fast. It's the long haul, long term.
They were afraid that if they were to attack the regime and not be fully backed, the regime stays in power, and that is horrible news for them.
Is it Trump
so
fired?
That's one guarantee they did not get. On the
You
other
voted
hand,
for
the
him.
situation would be really volatile. Looking at the Middle East and separatist groups and sometimes terror groups against one